No need to pee your chamois on this pod here. I'm Thomas, and you're listening to the Gracing Podcast, where we continue to recap what unfolded in Emporia, Kansas during Unbound. And today I'm joined by Cameron Jones. Obviously, by now you all know the name. He just won the Unbound 200. And probably if you are dialed in like the entire gravel content scene, you probably already came across a few interviews that he gave after his victory. But today I want to go a bit deeper. But first of all, great to have you on, Cam. Thanks for taking the time. Where do our listeners listen to you from?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm currently in Washington State, USA. It's been a long drive from Kansas. I think.
How far is it? Because the States, they are so huge for like Europeans. It's like crossing multiple countries. How many hours did you have to go?
We took a longer route to where we are now via some of the national parks. So it was probably 30 hours of driving the way we went, at least. And where we were yesterday was the furthest place in the United States that you can get from Kansas. So if you're looking for a way to escape the hype of the race, that was the place to go.
Nice. So you traveled there, but before we go into your race, which you talked about in a few other podcasts already, I want to go a bit further back, to be precise, 1 year back, because this Unbound attempt was your second time there, if I'm not misinformed. And just 1 year ago, you did your first Unbound, which you finished with a quite decent result, I would say, in 17th place overall. What did you learn and what did you think after your first Unbound that you then ended up utilizing for this edition?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I took away from my first Unbound. I finished 17th in the end, so it's not an incredible result on paper, but it was, certainly confidence inspiring. I think the biggest thing I took away was the confidence that I had the legs to compete with all the front runners there. I made a few mistakes, as always happens in the first time doing any race.
Which were your biggest mistakes?
Yeah, so I had a couple of crashes for one. One of them was just a silly crash on one of the many hundreds of 90-degree quarters, and I guess I just went into this year taking every single quarter with as much care as I could, because if you take a little bit more time and avoid a crash, a crash could take you out of the race. So just not doing anything silly there. Last year I had a couple of I was almost like a slow leak, sort of flat tire. There's nothing you can really do to change that, but I had some tires that I'd used before, and my tire on the rear, because in practice I had a couple of rear punctures and went with something with a bit more tread on the back to hopefully give a bit more rubber between the ground and the inside of the tire to prevent those sort of cuts. But there's nothing you can really do about flat tires. Although one thing you can do is ride on the front and ride away from other people, which was part of the motivation behind my tactics in the end. If you're riding in the front or in a small group, you can see a lot better what's in front of you. And most of the punctures do happen when you're in the middle of a bunch and you've only got a split second to react to anything that comes out from behind the wheel you're on. Trying to avoid flat tires by going more solo was a bit of the plan. And the final thing I learned was take as much water as you can carry. I spent I think there was 4 hours between the two aid stations last year and a bit less this year because we were faster. But last year I think I spent a good hour without any water. I had all the carbohydrate I needed, but if you don't have enough fluid to wash it down, it's not much use. And so, while I could top up at that next aid station, you sort of already go into a deficit if you spend that much time without liquids. So this year I just took as much as I could carry. I think if you were watching the live stream or saw any photos, I had like bottles down my back, bottles down my front, like two on the bike, just fitting as much as I could. And while it took me a bit longer after the A stations to like pack my jersey with it all, and Simon at the time was getting a bit annoyed that I was taking so long in the feed. But then going in ahead of the second aid station, I had heaps of water, he didn't, and I was actually able to help him out by.
And we'll come to this later. That
bottle.
probably ended up mattering during the race as well. So,
as it happened.
I think Dylan Johnson also had this as one of the key points, like heat management and hydration. Some of the videos he did after last year's and ahead of this year's Unbound. And I think especially if it's getting hot out there, you can't have too much water, essentially, right?
Yeah. Well, I hate to admit it, that was certainly the inspiration behind carrying lots of water, listening to his recommendations, and it certainly made sense, and it certainly worked.
Yeah. I mean, take the good ideas wherever they come from, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Always fair game. So then on the training side, we know many folks nowadays do the big Unbound block. They do like super high volume 30 plus hour weeks, probably for multiple weeks at a time. Did you do some modifications to your training specifically for Unbound as well, or did you rather do more or less your regular training regimen?
Yeah, I did. I have done a bunch of 30-hour weeks this year, like back home during the New Zealand summer. But my Unbound block was probably the most volume intensive I've done probably ever. I finished up my sort of first block of racing for the year at the Whiskey Off-Road, which is 4 weeks out from Unbound. So once I'd driven across to Virginia, where I was based for that next month, I got straight into, I think, 30-hour-ish weeks. So 3 weeks at about 30 hours each was the sort of block. And most of that was just big, long sort of zone 2 rides, but certainly a few efforts in there and trying to put in some hard threshold efforts and sprints right at the end of the ride. So you do 5 hours steady and then 5x3 sort of high threshold, and then like 10 all out 15-second sprints. That was one of the key sessions, which was aimed.
So you were ready to sprint at the end of Unbound.
Yeah, actually knowing that I had done those trainings helped give me confidence that the tactic of taking it to the line was a good idea. And having listened to some podcasts in the past, hearing Simon say he wasn't a sprinter. I mean, anything can happen after 9 hours of racing, but I decided I'd take it to the line if I had to.
And then did you do, I suppose, also some of the other by now pretty common stuff like heat training, altitude, maybe a bit sprinkled in as well? But I assume
it wasn't much altitude where I was. There were a few days that were like hot enough to be heat training, regardless of giving yourself extra layers or some hot water. I did try get in the bath a few times, but just the water temperature where we were staying wasn't quite hot enough to get any sort of get the heart rate up too much. It would have been nice to try, but as it happened on the day, it wasn't super hot. And I guess an advantage for me is I've been doing back-to-back summers for 3 or 4 years, so I haven't had a full winter, and so probably a lot more hot weather than most. So I'm sure that helps me in terms of heat adaptation.
So then at what day are you coming to Emporia?
I arrived on the Monday afternoon beforehand, and on my way in, I went and practiced some of the course, and that was actually the part of the course where I did sort of make the breakaway. And then every day, pretty much, I was out on the course.
How much did you check like weather apps? Because obviously the first days of the week it was still raining a lot, and like me, it was when I was doing my preview for Unbound, and I was checking constantly on different weather apps, and some had like more and some less rain, and so I ended up saying I don't know when I had to click the publish button. It was unclear to me, but and how concerned and nervous were you about like the potential of a muddy race and having to change your entire setup potentially, or did you take it rather chill?
I wasn't too concerned. My attitude is that it's the same for everyone. So if it's bad weather and you have to run, then everyone's going to be running. And I used to do a bit of running a while ago, so I was actually kind of keen for a big long slog like that. I guess I was lucky I had all the tyre selections. Schroby were on site with all the different widths and treads, so that would certainly help ease any concerns that I'd be on the back foot on the tyre front. I was certainly checking all the weather apps and even found a website with the rain gauges for everywhere in the region, so I could see not what was forecasted, but actually what had fallen in the different parts of the course. And getting there relatively early on like the Monday when there was a lot of rain, I could see how much it rained and then see how the course dried up with the given temperatures and wind. And then when it rained again on like the Thursday before the race, I could have an idea of how long it would take to dry up. And given the conditions over the Friday, over the rest of the Thursday and the Friday, and the wind, I was pretty confident. And like the day before the race, we drove out. We went and rode some of it, rode the first like pinch point where it could be muddy, and then drove out to the second pinch point where it had potential to be muddy, and it was fine like early afternoon the day before, so I knew it was only going to get better. But like I remember last year, we didn't really have any support crew to drive us around, or we got there quite late, only on the Wednesday, and the only way to know what the conditions are was to just like see what other people are posting on Instagram. And this year I knew I had to sort of take it into my own hands and go and do the course recon myself. So
be there
to be early. Yeah.
Because the vibe I was getting from not being there, just from following people on Instagram, mostly at least, was people were getting a bit crazy about the potential and playing around with their setups already, planning like doing whatever 35 slicks or so if it is muddy, and changing their forks even from suspension, no suspension, and so on. So which of course, like some of it is just the due diligence that you need to do for the race, but then at some level, if you get too concerned, probably also it impacts you in some way negatively. So I guess being relatively relaxed makes a ton of sense. So good that you can get into this mind state just ahead of this race, which I assume also for you was one of the top priorities this year. No, you had it marked in your calendar.
Yeah, it's one of the highest profile gravel races, and also one that on paper I should have done well at. So it was certainly one I put a lot of effort into.
And then a second thing that could have been on your mind, and I heard you talk about it in other podcasts a bit, is the wildcard situation. So for everybody who is listening and probably not 100% aware, this year Lifetime introduced the wildcard format where three wildcards are given out in each the women's and the men's field, or at least that was the initial plan. And after the first two races of the series, so after Sea Otter and Unbound, and you were already positioned very well for the wildcard. I think you were in first or in second place after Sea Otter.
In third place.
Third,
there was another New Zealand guy in second, and then Peter Vakoch in first.
Okay, so that was the situation. So take me a bit deeper into what your state of mind there was. How important was it for you to get into Lifetime? Was that a big goal for you this season? I mean, especially after you learned that you could apply for the wildcard but didn't get in the regular way, whatever you call this, the first batch. And how important was that wildcard in the days leading up to Unbound for you in your mind?
Yeah, it was definitely a big goal. Like, not making the wild card would have been like really disappointing after such a good sea otter, and like I knew, and if I just stuck with the other riders in the wildcard competition that I had to beat, then I knew I was as strong, if not stronger than them. So, like, playing it safe, I knew I had a pretty good chance of making it happen. But I also sort of had in the back of my mind that I'd take a great result or a win at Unbound over, well, even if there was a chance that it didn't work and I lost the lifetime selection. They started off with 3 wildcard places, and then the weeks leading up to Unbound, a rider pulled out and it became 4 spots. And then I think the 5th and 6th place in the wildcard standings weren't there, and 7th, I think, was Tobin, who I had suspicion would be working or sacrificing himself for Keegan.
Yeah.
And so that gave a bit of a buffer. Like, I no longer had to get top 3. I could probably still get through with like a 5th or a 6th. And so that further...
You probably also heard like the rumblings that were already out there that Peter Vakoc was probably not accepting the spot if it would get it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I did hear some talk about that. So, yeah, I knew I didn't have to have a absolute like top result to get through the lifetime, and it was worthwhile going all in to try and win the race rather than just the wildcard spot.
Good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I did.
I mean, I assume it's quite easy in these situations to just end up going the safe route and saying, "Look, I don't want to take any risks, just end up." But yeah, if you race like this, you definitely won't win Unbound. Which, spoiler alert, ended up doing.
It turned out to be one of the. It probably ended up being a safer route going off the front, like as I mentioned with the flat tire risk. Like any sort of technical descent, Simon and I would be split up and have like full sight of our own lines. So like it wasn't just luck that we didn't have flat tires, less than everyone behind. And just the power profile that ride required, being in like a 2-up brake as opposed to a surgy, like really active, like game playing peloton behind, I think played into our advantage as well.
Yeah, I mean, one number, let's jump ahead there for a second, but that I think I read or heard or whatever, is that last year you were 1 hour above 500 watts, and this year half an hour, with being in the breakaway all the time and not having to do all the surges that you do if guys attack, you need to chase and so on and so forth. Which,
yeah, that's right.
On the other hand side, I talked to Paul Voss, who is co-hosting here with me very often and has his own podcast, and he told me after Unbound that his race definitely, he had very good legs, and then he was in this chase that Mats Schmidt initiated at some point, and then he bridged to like the group of 6 or 7 that was chasing behind you guys, and like the high intensity efforts that he had to do several times during the day in the end cost him a good result, which is the opposite story of yours, essentially.
Avoid that. Yeah, it certainly wears you down, those high intensity surges.
So let's jump into the race day itself. I know you told the story a few times, but probably you still give our listeners a quick recap of what unfolded out there, how you ended up in the breakaway after like 1/4 more or less of the course. You were already out in front in a duo. How did that happen?
For the first 2 hours of the race, I was quite relaxed. There was one pinch point that I made sure I was towards the front on, but I wasn't too concerned about who was getting up the road, and the pace was so high. I knew that any breakaway wasn't going to get much of a gap in that first couple of hours. Before a little bit before the second pinch point, it was maybe a bit of crosswind, and there was a group up the road, maybe 40 seconds, and some of the bigger names were starting the chase and stringing it out. And I sort of moved to the front to start contributing to the chase. And when I rolled through with a good bit of momentum, and the people behind me kind of sat up and didn't pull through, so I found myself rolling off the front, and sort of just got caught up in the excitement of the moment and decided to keep pushing on and try and bridge across the original breakaway, which once I caught them had about 20 riders in it. It was a lot stronger than I thought, including...
Okay, that would have been my question, because that is before the broadcast went live time of the race, which I watched on Instagram. So I saw this early breakaway, and even in the live chat at some point, there were so many good guys in there. Like there was Jasper Öckelon at some point. There were Paul was in there, and several guys of the hitter category. I think even Mats Schmidt at some point made it to this breakaway, and I thought, well, the winner could very likely come from this group, which turns out correct if you made it. So you made it. I think it was like a group of 8 or 9 in the beginning, and then more and more guys somehow made it to this group, and you arrived when it was already in the 20 realm. So how long were you in this group? Because what I heard from Paul, because at this point there were no live pictures, is that at some point Keegan and Matt Beers joined the breakaway, and then at this point nobody rode anymore in there. Were you still in the group at this point, or had you already gone solo then when Keegan joined?
I don't know if he was referring to before or after I joined it. I don't think they were ever in the breakaway before I joined. So I bridged across like that 30 or 40 second gap. And when I caught them, it was on Divide Road, which is quite a technical and lumpy section. So the breakaway was strung out over 100 or 200 meters. So that played into my advantage in that everyone was kind of on their own, riding their own pace, and I was able to just ride through them basically. Coming from a mountain bike background, that technical, sort of punchy terrain is good for me. So caught the breakaway and was able to ride straight through them there was no real benefit from being on someone's wheel. So I was able to ride through and then out the other end. And once it got a bit less technical, it was just Simon who had jumped on my wheel, and we just kept riding hard. Managed to get out of sight. That was the plan. Like from the Monday when I got to Emporia, that was the part I rode and decided this would be a good place to be off the front because it's technical, so no real advantage being on wheels, and it's twisty, so you can get out of sight and just be able to ride your own lines. And so I was stoked to be able to make that race plan happen.
And so when Simon and you get away, how familiar are you with him? I assume you are aware of his breakaway attempt or breakaway at Sea Otter. Probably you also heard the interviews ahead of Unbound that he wanted to do a show and be away, or what was your info on him at this point?
Yeah, like I had raced him at Sea Otter, so I had seen his many attempts at breaking away and got an idea of his attitude towards racing. I'd also listened to a couple of podcasts mentioning him. He did a talk with Payson on his podcast after Sea Otter, and so they said something in there. He'd been in a whole lot of breaks in the Giro d'Italia, so I knew he was one of the perfect people to go with, that he would put everything into making it to the finish, and wasn't going to play games, and also seems like he raced like he had nothing to lose. I knew that he'd be able to give some tips and be a good mentor in the world of breakaways.
And so if you follow road racing, then we know everybody's having the radio and the time gaps. Everybody is aware of the situation. But then in gravel racing, that is not the point. Now that we see more and more live coverage of important races like Unbound, like the Trucker, we see more of the action. And by we, I mean us as the fans and spectators of the sport. And one thing that I realize is people are taking their phones a lot. How connected were you during the race? Like, did you have a WhatsApp chat with someone who was giving you time gaps? Were you connected to your, probably for people who didn't listen ahead? So you had your parents as your support crew in the aid stations, right? Were you connected to them? Were they giving you time gaps? Or what was the connectivity of you and Simon while you are away?
That was kind of the intention, but I made a decision before the race because I've got this big like S25 Ultra phone, which is like super heavy. It's like an iPad. I was like, I don't want to have to take that around the whole course, and so I got my old like S7 like 10-year-old phone and put the SIM card in that so I could take a little lightweight phone that I didn't care if I got sweaty or dropped. But in the morning of the race, I went to download Garmin Connect on it to pair it up with my Garmin to get those live notifications. And I think it wouldn't support Garmin Connect, so I couldn't actually have them paired. And the racing was the pace was hot enough that I didn't want to pull it out of my pocket and like sign in and stuff. Yeah. So I didn't actually have any communications. It would have been nice though. I think next time I'll bring a phone that can give me updates to the head unit and some timing splits and like exactly where they are in the feed zone, because the feed zone's like a kilometer long. Would be helpful. We probably
like, because what I was doing when I was watching the live feed, I was constantly also in the Athlinks app because you didn't get like that accurate time gaps. And just if you are in the correct race, you can just refresh by swiping down, and then you get the time gaps. So and Simon, because I remember one time but I think he was most likely talking to his crew in the aid station, because it was just before, I think, the first, maybe the second aid station. He was on his phone for quite a bit. Did he give you some time gaps, or did you rely on people at the side of the road? Or
there was a motorbike that was dropping, like coming forward and dropping back. They probably gave us 6 or 7 time gaps, and then there was the Orange Seal Jeep that was following us in the second half of the race, that they also must have had the access to the Athlinks and gave some time gaps. So there's maybe like 7 or 8 time gaps we got throughout the day, which was certainly, it was good for morale since the time gaps are only getting bigger and bigger. Like started at 25 seconds and then by 2 hours to go it was like 8 minutes, and then we heard it was down to maybe 4 or 5 minutes when Mads and Torbjorn were chasing. But yeah, we knew we were close enough.
And did they probably a pretty detailed question? But did they give you the time gap to the chase group and or the peloton? I assume to the chase group definitely, but also to the main bunch.
Yeah, I remember getting one that was like 3-minute gap to the peloton of 40 or 50, and then not long after it was like 5 minutes to a chase and another 5 minutes to the peloton. So we were a bit concerned after hearing only 3 minutes, because that was well before halfway, and then once we got that 5 minutes and then another 5 minutes back, that was when we sort of started to dream that it could really happen. But I don't know, the time gaps didn't really make much of a difference. Like I was still going to put my head down, keep riding hard, and yeah, we were never going to sit up. The first sort of point we were trying to get to was get past that Little Egypt section, from which we knew that if we did get caught, it would be by a much more select group, and that they would be, this was what Simon was saying, that once we got caught, then they'll be probably in worse shape than us, just because of the efforts made to force that selection so late in the race.
Yeah. Little aside on Little Egypt, actually, because I was hearing ahead of the race that this year it was definitely much smoother than last year. And I think it was even in the podcast that you did with Payson that he mentioned something to that extent as well. Could you quantify how big the difference was? Because that was when we did here on the podcast the annual award show. We had like the most notorious segment award, and that went to Little Egypt because it's really something that in the last years put like the fear into the riders. And from what I'm understanding, not having been there before nor after, is it's not as insane anymore, or it wasn't this year at least.
No, it was a lot more chunky last year from memory. Like even last year, it wasn't that bad, but I guess when you're in a group, it can be a bit technical because you can't see as well what you're coming up against. But I'd done it in practice this year, so I knew that it was nothing to worry about. I did actually puncture down there in practice this year, so I did ease off a bit on the descent. That was a good thing. Having a gap is that we could be a lot more conservative down the hills, sort of make sure we left a big gap between ourselves and get on the brakes a bit and just make sure, like when you've got an 8-minute gap, it's sensible to take another few seconds to get down to avoid any mechanicals.
From the dynamic, so you have already alluded to the dynamic that Simon and you had, that he was this experienced breakaway guy on the road. I think you also talked about how he was giving you some advice about being in this breakaway situation. But like if you would have punctured being away, do you think from the dynamic that he would have waited, or would he have just taken the opportunity by the horns and gone with it? I mean, it's a hypothetical question, obviously, but
yeah, I have actually thought about that. Like, probably depends when it happened. Like, in the first half of the race, he probably would have kept going. Like when the gap was 3 minutes, at maybe like 80 miles in, he probably would have kept going because that wasn't much of a gap. Like, we'd probably be almost within sight of the peloton by the time we got going again. But then maybe at 120 miles, when the gap was like 5 or 6 minutes and we still had a good 3 or 4 hours to go, then he may have waited. But then in the last 2 hours, I'm sure he would have thought close enough to the end that I can go alone. So, yeah, it would have been interesting. I was thinking the same, like at what point do I feel like I don't need him anymore?
Yeah, makes sense. These are the questions you ask yourself. And now a bit of a technical question maybe, but how long are roughly the turns you're doing when like you're still in, let's say, the middle of your breakaway period? Are each of you doing like 2 minutes, 5-minute pulls? What is the rhythm you're settling in there?
Yeah, probably closer to 2 minutes. They were quite long, actually. I feel like, yeah, it takes a while to get into your rhythm, and then it's nice to have a good length of time between pulls that you can sort of get into your pockets and have some nutrition. And, yeah, that you're trying to stay really aero, so sort of like finding in your aerodynamic position, and you want to sort of settle into that, and then once you are settled, actually have some time in it before you flick through. Yeah, I was surprised how long we were spending on the front together. But
how tall is Simon? Because he appears on the screen like a smaller guy, so he would probably get more draft from you than you did get from him, or was it fair game draft wise?
Oh, it was certainly great being in the wheel. You definitely had an advantage, but yeah, he had a far better deal than I did, sitting behind me. Yeah, he's not that small, but I'm definitely one of the larger riders in the group.
Okay, so there he can make a few points on you. So are you thinking about this? I mean, you have a lot of time to think about stuff like this when you're there. Are you trying to compensate by always being like 5 seconds less in the wind than him or so?
I was never really thinking about the time of the turns. I think we were both like do as much as each of us can. We're both fully committed to it. So even if one was stronger than the other, and they'd probably do a longer pull, there was a time just after the first aid station, he told me like, oh, I'm having a not so good moment right now, and I fully understood. Like in a 9-hour race, everybody has their ups and downs, and then maybe 3 hours ago, I had my, or 2.5 hours ago, had my sort of down moment as we're going into a headwind, and so I think he pulled some longer turns then. So yeah, it was a really good partnership. When I was on the front, I just made sure to be as aerodynamic as I could because it made it faster for me and easier for me, and we gave him a bit less to drive behind. And when I was in the wheel, I was also making sure I stayed in the drops and didn't make myself too upright so I could get stay as efficient as possible.
And a story that you already told somewhere else is at some point towards the end, I don't know how many miles to go, but Simon is then starting to ask some age group riders for gels and nutrition. And I don't know if he had asked you first, but I was wondering, especially because he is this breakaway artist, are you at this point believing that he's running out of fuel, or do you consider that it might even be a little bluff he's very smartly trying to play there?
Yeah, I fully believed it. I didn't even consider that it was a bluff, so that would have been crafty if it had been. It seemed pretty genuine when he was asking other riders. Like he might, if he just said to me like, don't have any fuel, then I might have been a bit suspicious. But then, he was acting well if he didn't have enough fuel. As soon as he sort of let on that he might be on the back foot with nutrition, my first thought was, oh, I've got heaps of spare. And then I was like, oh, actually, we're probably close enough to the end now that I don't actually need him to be in full strength. But then after he sort of showed that sign of weakness, I made sure to not show too much strength myself. So on the climbs, we'd sort of ride side by side and not push the pace too much and still lap off in similar length turns. Put on a bit of here and there.
On Pace and Show, you even told the story how some of the hard rocking on the bike that you did at some point was on purpose, but not because you were suffering that hard. So we don't have to look far. Actually, I mean, bluffing happens in bike races, and I don't know, Simon, so I have no clue, but I think it's would be very elaborate to ask age groupers for gels to give this away, but probably wouldn't put it beyond.
Yeah, it's a good idea, maybe something to consider in the future. I think it was a very honest breakaway. Like, we both did as much as we could, and then I think, we said.
And I would assume, like, if you ride so many hours with a guy, you also get, like, you start understanding how he rides, how he looks on the bike, and what looks good and what doesn't look good. So probably you can just verify, and you already have the hunch that he is not as fresh anymore as he was 3 hours ago.
Yeah, and when going into the last 2 hours, when we had an 8-minute gap, you only have to win the race by 30 seconds. So I wasn't pushing the pace that last 2 hours, doing as little as possible to make sure I was as fresh as possible when it came down to the finale.
Talking about it, similar spot, I think with a few Ks to go, he tells you that he is done, and that the race is yours. You believed him. You had like already all the signs that is the case. And are you at this point already convinced that you're winning Unbound?
Yeah, first time he said it, I was a little bit suspicious, and then sort of flipped him through, and he's like, "No, I'm really done." I was like, "Oh, yeah, all good." And even if I don't know, had it been bluffing a bit, I had good legs and felt like I could still take the sprint and match any sort of attack he did up the hill. Uh, yeah, it was a bit anticlimactic when you kind of know the result or the likely result, like 10, 20 minutes from the finish. But yeah, pretty special feeling getting the gap on that hill and rolling into town without having to like a lot more
Are you making an
relaxed
extra
finish.
effort? Are you making an extra effort to stay focused at this moment? Because, like, if at this point you puncture or you bail in a silly way, he is for sure riding as hard as he still can.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few tight quarters towards the end, so I made sure to not do anything silly there and take my time, and also be conscious of the age group of the 100 miler finishers, because there are other hazards out on the course. And making sure. I think the only thing that was going to sort of slow me down at that point was getting a cramp. So yeah, made sure not to overextend myself any more than I had to.
So let's talk a bit about the bigger picture. The one question that I have for you is whether or not you think that the early breakaway is the place to be in gravel's current state. And to give you a bit more context, so at Trucker, when Toby Kongstad also won with like 150-kilometer solo, I wrote afterwards, I'm curious if we are going to see more of these long solo or breakaway victories. And in the recap episode of Unbound that I did with Paul, I laid it out a bit more why I think in the current state where we don't have enough teams that you really have domestiques in gravel who really work in the chase, you very quickly in like the chase group, the group of the favorites in particular, nobody wants to work anymore. There is some call it the Group 2 syndrome. I think it's the Lantern Rouge guys who coined the term, but probably it existed before. I don't know. But definitely that happens very quickly in gravel racing. And you already said you were already considering to be in the breakaway for various reasons, including the power profile of the breakaway. But did that also, do you think there is something to it that breakaways have a pretty high likelihood of being successful?
Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. There's the teams thing. There's not as many teams with riders to burn. Like there's maybe some alliances, but the gravel was very much an every man for himself kind of race. It's quite hard to get your team all strung out on the front and have enough domestiques actually make it through these pinch points to then be able to ride themselves into the ground to chase anything down. I think maybe these fields aren't quite as deep as on the road, for example. So there's always going to be a handful of guys that are on paper a lot stronger than the rest, and so everyone else is going to be like, I'm not going to do work on the front when these guys are here. Like I'm just stoked to be here. I'm just hanging on. And the other thing is that, and I guess in road, it's all about the win. No one cares you get second and third. But in gravel, like a top 10's good. Everyone's got like going for a top 20 or a top 30 or a podium, and all those, especially with this overall points in the Lifetime Series or the Gravel Earth Series or whatever they're going for. Like minor placings mean a lot more. So people are less likely to go for that all or nothing kind of racing attitude.
Though I think on the road nowadays that the UCI points matter so much because of relegation, they are also sprinting like crazy for 30th place or wherever the cutoff is for these UCI points.
Too.
But yeah, the public doesn't care. And I think in gravel it's a bit different, especially because you follow it in a different way. So the stories even of the top 20 finishers are probably interesting.
And again, I think gravel, like, it's a bit less of a advantage being in a peloton because, I mean, compared to the road, the terrain is taking up a lot more of your watts, so the speeds are lower. the following distance is probably a little bit less, and so it's a lot. Well, there's somewhat less of an advantage being in a group, and then that whole push risk thing.
Mm.
So I think we'll see more breakaways in this race in the future. The last 2 years, it's been 2 up breaks that have won. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised if that continues to happen. Although everyone else is going to see that that's going to happen, and it's going to be a lot harder to make one, I'm sure.
Yeah, especially for you. I mean, consider yourself a marked guy now.
Absolutely, yeah. I had that thought when I was out there. I'm like, I need to convert this opportunity because I don't think I'll ever be allowed to do this again, even if I hadn't got the win.
Most likely. Next year, you need a different plan. So when I did a bit of research and digging around, one thing that sprung to my eye super quickly is that you do a bit of different content formats than other people do. And I was wondering if you plan to be or are going to be the people's champion, is how I put it in my notes. Like the pro who the normies like us can relate to the best. And I give a few examples. So one, we already mentioned that your age crew that was probably very dialed, but they were your parents who came with you. And then I saw you doing, I think it was real, whatever, some Instagram stuff where you mixed your own bottles with different ingredients, similar to what I do, for instance. And I really digged it. So probably you do it because you don't have a other nutrition sponsor nowadays that you need to push, but also it could almost be by choice. And I was wondering if there is a method to this stuff almost, or a philosophy behind it.
Yeah, I guess I'd probably only have called myself professional at the start of this year. Up until then, I've been studying. I've just finished up an engineering degree. So you live away from home on a budget and traveling the world trying to fit in like elite bike racing at the same time. You are trying to do stuff at as little cost as possible. So yeah, making your own sports drinks, you get pretty much the same thing as an expensive name brand, but just mixing something up at home. And yeah, mum and dad were pretty keen to come over and watch one of these races, and they chose a pretty good one to come to. I did have like other options from Scott in the pits, but it was nice to be able to give mum and dad the instructions and know that they were the two people that were fully focused on me rather than having a bunch of other riders, especially when big bunches can come through all together. But yeah, everyone's just trying to work out their race plans and just do this gravel thing on their own. It's becoming more professional, but it's still everyone just working out what works best for them and just trying to have a good time while they do it. So yeah, it's cool to be able to relate to the other thousands of riders not in the elite field.
I mean, if I put on like my marketeer hat, I definitely dig personally what you're doing, and I think it's even a cool opportunity or positioning almost to that could also unlock different sponsorship opportunities. I mean, right now, fresh off winning Unbound, I assume your inbox was very, very full already, and brands want to work with Unbound winners. But there is definitely a big audience. I mean, of people doing drink mix. There are very few top riders who won Unbound, for instance, who work with a supplier of maltodextrin. All work with like the never seconds of this world and so on. And that was interesting to me to see how much you anticipate this to change, or if you want to put out more content in this realm and probably also pick different brands to work with. I mean, right now I assume you can choose.
Yeah, but given that thought, like on the nutrition front, never really pressed to get a sponsor because I do like using a range of different things. And it is so cheap to make your own stuff that it's not a huge cost missing out, not having a nutrition sponsor. But I guess if there's money on the line, then it'd be silly not to at least represent a brand. But it is tempting to
just go to a big sugar
keep
brand.
doing what I'm. Bulkfoods.com has got most of my Unbound nutrition from. Got 10 pounds of maltodextrin and 5 pounds of fructose powder, and just mix them in and put 200 grams in each bottle, and away you go. I had some of those Rice Krispie treats out there and the start of the race, and a jam sandwich that Mum made me the night before. So, it's just old school.
Yeah. Listeners, you're hearing the people's champion talk. That is how easily it can be done. So what were the most interesting emails, Instagram messages, or whatever that you did get after Unbound that you want to talk about publicly?
It was quite cool. Like, a lot of people were reaching out and asking me what bike setup I ran, and asking me about my Scott bike, and especially my cockpit setup, which is a bit more aftermarket, and what tires and the clearance and stuff. It was I was just so blown away by the support from around the world, like people I knew and people I didn't. And I guess they often said that it was cool to see someone a bit more relatable and hadn't been pro for super long and had a bit more like an everyday kind of setup. But to see that you can still win one of the biggest races in the world. And so I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunities for sponsorship and being able to do this for many years is the future now. So I'm certainly a lot more relaxed about my future after this result.
I'm very curious what is going to happen on the Scott front in gravel, in particular, as they have you now. So here's a little anecdote that happened when I was in Italy doing the hills earlier this year. Probably you heard about it. It was like this super crazy Mudfest race that Mattia De Macchi had put together. And
say that.
I met what would you call it? A little traveling group, a congregation from Scott folks that were there. I think 6-7 people, some from engineering, some from marketing. And I talked to them and they told me that they were like researching, investigating, getting the vibes of the gravel scene. So there is definitely something in the making. I don't know. I assume you know more about what's going on there than here. But I just wanted to share it because on the one hand side, they at this point it seemed to me like they have since a long time they had a gravel bike, but no updates. And now looking at what's going on, what do people ride, and so on. And now they have an Unbound winner, which is probably pretty useful if you want to sell gravel bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be cool to sort of use this new standing as one of the more well-known gravel riders at the moment to, whichever sort of sponsor path I go down to have access to the secret stuff of what's coming in and using that in the decisions of, what gear I'm using in the future. But the Scott bike at the moment's amazing. I couldn't really ask for much more. I think the way things are going is bigger tyre clearance. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more tyre clearance on the next editions.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that they're out there doing the research in the real world.
Yeah. Do you have a clue how many followers you gained on Instagram since you won?
I think it's 4,000 at the moment. I was at 4,200, now it's 8,200. So
you're spot on.
That was pretty insane.
You're spot on. So interesting that you mentioned the 4-2 because, like, I don't know why, but I had the impulse when you crossed the finish line on the live stream, and I was probably 2 minutes behind or so, to just check your Instagram and screenshot how many followers you had at this very moment, because for some reason I was thinking about how everybody is talking that winning Unbound is life changing and so on, and of course, like, one way to measure the awareness, especially for a guy like you, everybody, I assume, has heard your name before and was aware of your existence, but you were not like a super big name for everybody. And just seeing it occurred to me, I did it, jumped on there when you were at 4,400, and then we tracked the growth. Today I checked around 8.4 or something. So yeah, your notifications must have been very, very full in the 24 hours or so after winning.
Oh, absolutely. We were driving that 30 hours out to where we are now, and I was doing half the driving, so couldn't do it then. But
you did do half the driving yourself. Wow.
Yeah, when my friend was driving, I was just full time on trying to reply and respond to everything. And so sorry if I've missed anyone's. It was quite inundated, the inbox. But yeah, it's interesting. You said, like, when I crossed the finish line, I was at 400, which is a good couple of hundred more. So another thought of being in that breakaway, I'm like, even if this ends in nothing, still these days with such a good live coverage, there is something to be gained from being out the front and almost doing it just for the TV. Like, a lot of people would want to get on TV, even if it's going to blow up their whole race, just for the profile. So as a sort of emerging rider, that was definitely in the back of the mind. Just yet another justification for doing the tactics we did.
My understanding is that we see this year already much more teams in gravel, and I think next year we will see even more, and probably even with bigger budgets than what we have seen so far this year. What is just personally more attractive or appealing to you? Going the privateer route with the Unbound win, I think it is definitely makes for a pretty good opportunity in a privateer world, even though it has definitely gotten harder in the last 2 or so years. Or is there something to the team concept that you dig? Could you see yourself joining a gravel team of sorts in the future?
Yeah, I feel like I would quite enjoy riding as a team. I guess I've taken this recent big win, but I've never felt like I'm doing it to get those top results and to get the glory. I feel like I get just as much out of riding for someone else, or even just like going in breakaways as like a sacrificial rider up the road, so people behind could just get to sit in. But yeah, I think it'd be silly to waste this opportunity and the recent profile I've got, and just make the most of it to build my own brand. And so in the future there may be chances of riding teams, but just use this momentum and use this hype to build my brand as big as possible and sort of increase my value there.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I think, like,
myself,
the smarter teams in the gravel world definitely don't operate like road teams, and they better shouldn't. But they understand that there is that it's so powerful that in gravel we already have all these relatively approachable people as the pros and the riders, and you are quote unquote personalities, also, but you all, or content creators, right? Like, everybody is taking this seriously just because you also have to succeed in this domain. But it's also what today's audiences dig, right? We want to be closely connected to the athletes that are out there, and it's not the teams or the big brand on the logo like we have in road cycling. I mean, who is a fan of a UAE or Visma, Leaser Bike, or whatever team, right? Nobody.
Yeah, I guess that people do follow the riders more than the teams, and especially so in the gravel environment where like all these races are open to anyone, and so it's a lot easier to connect and relate to everyone doing the event because everyone is out there doing the same event, using the same equipment. Speeds and times might be different, but everyone's going through the same struggles, if not more, when you're out there taking 13 hours rather than 9. Everyone's trying just as hard. They just have to do so for longer.
Did you rewatch the live stream of your Unbound victory?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, well, I guess having 30 hours in the car, we just like put the phone up on the dashboard and listen to the recap, and it was quite entertaining listening to everyone, the commentators' speculations on what was going on, and then also cool talking to Payson afterwards to tell them exactly what was going on.
Yeah. So, what was your takeaway from it? Should we have more live streams in gravel?
Oh yeah, it was incredible coverage, and a 9-hour race through pretty uniform kind of terrain. It was always going to be a struggle to make it entertaining, but by flicking between the various groups and men's and women's races, and having the commentators there, certainly made it entertaining. Yeah, I remember hearing a few years ago they were talking about live streaming Unbound, like that'd be the most boring thing ever to watch, but they made it a good show. So hopefully they do more of that in the future. I know the Gravel Worlds in Nebraska was live streamed last year and had commentators, and
I
think they'll do that again. And that Trucker had some
Trucker
live stream,
broadcast the 360, and of course the UCI, great. The World Championships, but that's not streamed; it's broadcast on TV.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, and it's certainly helped all the riders. Even if you don't win, you can get yourself on TV and get yourself noticed.
Yeah. I mean, last year it was Chase Walk in the breakaway, who then later explained that he did it to grow his Instagram page, which worked quite well.
Yeah.
And so with the live streams, more opportunity arises for everybody. And it's just also, I mean, being someone who does podcasts and newsletters about gravel racing, it becomes very hard if your only source of information is whatever Instagram live coverage exists, which is always spotty, and in the case of many races, not even existent. So then we just understand much less about what is actually happening out there, what type of riders we have. We know the names, we see the results, but if we want gravel to be a spectator sport, then definitely we need more of these live streams.
Yeah. They need to bring in some like gravel crits, like a short track the day before for seeding or something. That'd be good spectator.
Yeah.
Or the gravel crit sounds so sketchy.
Which race was it that had was it Mid-South? They did the dirt crit?
Valley of Tears.
Or Valley of Tears. Valley of Tears.
That'd be fun to
do. Maybe something that every race promoter should put in its playbook.
Yeah, because a 200-mile loop isn't the most spectator friendly.
No, especially not for live spectators. But on TV it worked. I think they did a pretty good job. But there are growing pains. I mean, people talked a bit about the how do they call them, 4x4s or so, like these big cars they had. They were sometimes in the way and providing draft and whatnot. But we had coverage that was pretty good and valuable.
Yeah, hats off to the guy sitting on the back of that side-by-side that was holding the camera for 9 hours straight. Someone needs to buy that man a beer at the end.
Yeah, for sure. So what are your next big goals this year? Or is it all gravy from here on out?
I guess, Unbound took a bit of pressure off the rest of the season. Like, regardless of what happens, it's going to be a success. But, of course, I'm going to want to do as well as I can and keep the momentum going. been racing this weekend and the following weekend in the Washington, Oregon area. It's like a mountain bike Saturday, gravel race Sunday this weekend. Like I said, there'll be a few other Grand Prix races there, the Leavenworth Bike Fest. Then doing a road tour, actually, like a 3-day Omnium down in Oregon with some mates from New Zealand. I won the GC last year, so we'll go and try and keep that in the team this year. And then my first like big focus is the Oregon Trail Gravel Grinder. So that's a 5-day gravel stage race. I think it's part
It's
of
a
the
lovely
Gravel Earth
one.
series. Yeah, I raced last year. It's an incredible courses and competition, and just the vibe off the bike. They supply all the camping and the meals, and so you can just hang out and get to know the other races a lot better than you can at things like Unbound, where everyone's so busy and got so many obligations. So look forward to hanging out with people like Payson and Mattia and a bunch of the Girona crew that are going to race.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good also contrast to Unbound, I expect, in various respects. And then when it comes to the lifetime Grand Prix, now you did get your wild card and you're bright competitively positioned in the lifetime overall. You have a mountain bike background. Do you think you can get a pretty good overall result, or is that not even like your top priority now?
Don't think too much about the overall. You just got to take it race by race. I know that Leadville on paper's not going to be my best event, but the last three, like Schwarmigan, I'm one of the riders that's the most closely connected to the XCO history. Like I was racing World Cups in 2022 and some like getting podiums and some like Cat 1s in 2023. A lot of the riders on the scene have raced XCO, but it was some time ago. So I think Schwarmigan, which is the fourth race, it's only like 2 hours long, could be a good one for me. And then Big and Little Sugar are both quite technical. So yeah, I should be able to have as good a chance as anyone there. Leadville, I just got to get through. I think just looking at the moment, I might not be able to spend lots of time at altitude, just having to go home to New Zealand to sort out my visa and to allow myself to be here for the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So that might cut into some of the altitude time. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I think Leadville this year will be more of a learning experience for hopefully doing the Grand Prix the following year and being in it from the start.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have a dropped race. I think with only one dropped race, you can no longer on purpose drop any race because it's just too risky to do so. But still, like on paper, Little Sugar, Schwarm, as you say, they could be good races for you. Interesting year still.
Yeah.
Interesting year still you ever had. So, do you have any like closing thoughts on Unbound? Now it's a bit more than a week, or almost 2 weeks ago that you crossed that finish line in first spot. In your reflection since then,
reflections. I guess I've had my fair share of bad luck over the years, and I've like had the legs I had at Unbound for a good while now, and like I feel like my physical performance at Unbound was nothing special. Like I've done higher power and similar length training rides. It was just that everything came together at that race, and almost like the unlucky races I'd had in the past that prevented me from having that breakthrough ride were probably worth it, which it gave me a bit more of a leash and allowed me to get away and then have that breakthrough ride on the best stage possible. I guess going forward, that'll be a bit harder now. Got a bit more of a target on my back. But yeah, it's interesting, like having that one ride. I might go back to having exactly the same results as I used to, which were by no means bad, but nothing super stand out. I'm still going to be like such a bigger name, and it made me wonder like how many people out there are capable of this and just haven't had that lucky moment yet. And I guess to anyone that's still battling away, trying to make it, just keep doing so, and it'll all come together at some point. And yeah, you'll be able to make that quantum leap forward in your career that I've found recently.
So we had a guy on our Discord server asking me to ask you if you plan to race Unbound ever again. I think the answer is definitely a yes from your end, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a race that suits me, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I know some people either love it or hate it, and I just love it. And yeah, no matter what luck you have, you can find a good race out there and push your limits, and you just got to be in it every year, and eventually it'll come together and you'll have a good race.
Hey, Cameron, thanks a lot for taking the time, for coming on today, telling the people about your journey to winning Unbound and how it all unfolded. Good luck for the rest of your season.
Hey, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, thanks for listening.